Gazef changed the subject. Well, leaving that for now, could we call over your strategist? I'd like to talk to him, although I guess it's tricky to have him come here at the moment. Yes, he's heading up my position. We don't know when the Empire will make its move, so I want to keep him where he is. Marquis Revan may have been cooperating with the kingdom, but his top priority was still his own domain. Refusing was only natural. Even though it's the same old pattern, I just don't like this tense atmosphere. Gazef sighed. I am not hoping for a serious charge from the Empire, but if they were going to attack, it'd be better for my mental health if they would just launch it already. He sensed the unsteadiness in the kingdom's army and tried to locate the source. Aha! One potential strategy the Empire could take is to wait for the kingdom to get antsy and act. It would be hard to move all these men together. For that reason, any force's slightest movement will look like a large ripple from the edge. Even if we ray packed together and there are too many of us to attack, they could easily rip to pieces any prey that is out of line. They ray like a beast on the hunt. Marquis Revan followed Gazef's nervous gaze. He saw the soldiers in the left wing rushing around. He seemed to grasp something. It looks to me like they ray trying to move soldiers from the back up to the front line. If they ray only changing formation, then we don't need to worry, but that Marquis Overlord's flag. It seems like the general of the left wing means to move up to the front line himself. The kingdom had nobles faction members on either wing. King's faction members were concentrated in the center. The commander of the center group was King Ramposa III. The commander of the left wing was Marquis Overlord. It's highly unusual for the general to change the formation so he's up front. You know, Sir Gazef, that the Marquis brought his elite men. This war will get the attention of many nobles. If his forces can put up an admirable fight against the individually stronger Imperial Knights, he'll be recognized as the noble with the strongest unit in the kingdom. Marquis Revan flashed a provocative look at Gazef, as if to say, won't it bother you if his unit is considered stronger than your Royal Select? But that wasn't about to ruffle Gazef. The Royal Select is guarding His Majesty. Even if the Empire charges, I have no intention of moving them without His Majesty's orders. Their only job is to make sure the king gets back to the capital safely. He patted his sword. Although there's the possibility that I go out on my own to kill the enemy's momentum. The kingdom has 4 treasures, and that's Razor Edge, I see. The Marquis looked at Gazef from top to bottom. The gauntlets of vitality made it so the wearer never got fatigued. The amulet of immortality constantly healed the wearer. Guardian armor, made from the hardest metal in existence, adamantite, was said to be able to save the wearer from a fatal critical hit. And Razor Edge was a magic sword enchanted in the pursuit of sharpness that cut armor like butter. With all of them equipped, you yourself are the kingdom's greatest treasure. I heard that the kingdom originally had 5 treasures, but have they always been together right here? Receiving such an overblown compliment, being compared to a treasure, Gazef knew it was flattery, but couldn't he stop himself from blushing. Oh, cut it out, Marquis Revan. His Majesty is the truly amazing one. He knew what it would mean to lend all these treasures to a commoner, yet he still entrusted them to me. You do have a point. Honestly, I thought it was foolish to entrust them to a commoner. I thought it would only mean more people leaving the king's faction. But now that we ray here together on the battlefield, it seems like a great idea, even if it's self-centered. I hope I can live up to your expectations. Gazef looked out at the ranks of Imperial Knights. With the exception of Triad Caster Fluda Paradine, he didn't feel like they had any particularly strong opponents. He was confident that he could beat their strongest 4 knights. He even had a faint hope that with all the treasures equipped, he could take Fluda. But he didn't think he could beat Aints Ul Gaun. He just couldn't see it happening. No matter how positively he tried to visualize things, no matter how optimistic he was, he saw himself getting killed with a single mysterious spell. What's wrong? Nothing. He was known as the kingdom's strongest warrior. If he showed any weakness, it would have an adverse effect on the soldiers' morale. I mean, I was just feeling sorry for Prince Barbaro. Sorry for him? Could it be that? I see. So I see. What are you trying to say? No, it just seems like you think that the king sent the prince to Khan to stop him from achieving anything here. Was there some other reason? Marquis Revan winced. Yes, there certainly was. His Majesty really trusts you, you know. Gazef had no idea what that was supposed to mean, and it showed on his doubtful face, so the Marquis explained. Naturally, If the king's most trusted captain is extremely wary of Aints Ul Gaun, so is he. Rather than putting his son on a battlefield where no one knows what will happen, he sent him somewhere safe, even though there isn't as much to achieve there. The old me would have been offended that he sent his child somewhere safe when so many parents were sending their children to the battlefield. Then he smiled like a father. But now I understand. I would probably do the same for my son. Yeah, Marquis Revan, you are a father through and through. Marquis Revan smiled. Gazef knew it was rude, but he couldn't help but think his expression was unusually warm, happy and proud. I sure am. I promised I'd play with him a bunch after this war is over. I am an utterly normal father. But we've gotten off topic. Anyhow, that's how it is. I am sure Prince Barbaro doesn't understand his father's feelings. It's a bit sad when a parent's feelings don't get through to his child. Gazef wasn't sure how to respond. He didn't have kids, so he couldn't really relate. Right. Do you think there could be a detachment going to raid Rantel? They might stop at nothing to bring it down, even if they were heavily criticized. I've been changing the subject every time I don't know what to say, thought Gazef, but the Marquis went along with it. It won't be so easy to take down Rantel with its 3 layers of walls. It would probably be tough even if they mobilized their 2 remaining corps. My strategist doubts they would try an operation like that. Oh, but what about using flying mounts? Or what if they had another secret army? It would be impossible. Ultimately, it's a difficult proposition to conquer a city with small numbers. Without more people, they wouldn't be able to take it. Sir Gazef, there's one critical requirement for capturing Rantel. Do you know what it is? Gazef honestly shook his head. You need to claim a great victory in a head-on fight with the kingdom. If it was a narrow victory, it would be difficult to rule after the fact. The citizens wouldn't take kindly to invaders, so a resistance movement would spring up. Even if the Empire managed to take Rantel with a detachment, if our soldiers were unharmed, they would move immediately to retake it. That's why the Empire is aiming for a crushing victory. That way the citizens will be too scared to resist. There won't be enough army left to fight. Essentially, the Empire had to win this battle. It had to be such an overwhelming victory that it would make neighboring countries, and especially the kingdom, think twice about trying to retake the territory. Suddenly, Gazef felt like he had all the pieces of the puzzle. He just couldn't discern what he was supposed to be seeing. He was tormented by a vague sense of foreboding. What's wrong, Sir Gazef? He thought if he told Marquis Revan about all the mixed-up puzzle pieces in his head, the Marquis would use his superior intellect to put them together for him. But the Marquis suddenly turned to face the Empire's position. Sir Gazef, it seems they were finally making a move. The Imperial army was parting as if to create a path. Gazef figured they must be splitting to counter the kingdom's left and right wings. Then a flag he didn't recognize was raised in the center. It was a flag with a crest that Gazef had absolutely no knowledge of, from neither the kingdom nor the Empire. A group of figures proceeded forward. All eyes were on that group. Then Gazef had a sense of dread. Marquis Revan next to him surely witnessed the same events and swallowed hard. Realizing he wasn't the only one feeling it, Gazef sensed a bitter taste spread across his tongue. His heart began to pound. They were a strange force. There were about 500 mounted soldiers, hardly anything compared to the 2 armies facing each other, but there was something abnormal about them. Even at this distance, their ghastly presence seemed to pummel him. Gazef's memories of Khan came vividly back to him. He remembered the monster knights Aints had created. There were about 200 warriors with the same spiked armor and giant shields. The rest were also grotesque soldiers. They wore leather armor. He saw they carried weapons like axes, spears, and crossbows. If the ones in front were knights, then the ones in the back were warriors, he supposed. Either way, they weren't human. Were genuine monsters, and they were riding magical beasts. They could properly be described as bone monsters, wrapped in a wavering fog rather than flesh. Yellow like pus and a brilliant green occasionally flashed within the haze. Gazef's whole body erupted in goosebumps. This is bad. This is really bad. His impression wasn't terribly articulate, but he couldn't come up with any more appropriate words. So the Empire has incorporated monsters into its army. This is quite a surprise. Really gives you goosebumps. No, Marquis Revan, that's not it. That's not why you have goosebumps. The Marquis asked curiously. It's the threat of death. It stimulates our human survival instinct. Marquis Revan was surprised, but Gazef turned away from him to look at the Imperial army. Their horses are cowering. Even trained war horses are frightened into paralysis. What could that possibly be? Does the Empire have a secret unit? No, how could that be? Those aren't monsters that humans could tame and control. He wasn't sure what kind of monsters they were, but his intuition as a warrior made him confident of that. That has to be Ain't Ul Gaun's cavalry. Is that the army of the caster you ray afraid of? Marquis Revan, I want you to gather your former adventurers immediately. What is the best course of action? I want to ask people who have fought many monsters and survived. He was probably going to say he understood, but before he could, they moved to protect their master. Of course they did. They probably had a better idea of how powerful their opponents were than even Gazef. Marquis Revan, the former Orichalcum plates raced over on their horses. Did you see that? Do you feel it? At the head of the group was their leader, a holy knight of the fire god, Boris Axelson. His voice contained fear he couldn't hide. Marquis Revan was speechless. Gazef knew exactly how he felt. A former Orichalcum plate adventurer, protected by this huge army, was so frightened his voice was trembling. Gazef determined it was no longer time to worry about manners and asked, "Tell me, what is that?" "No need for introductions, I just want you to tell me what you know." Boris clutched the sigil hanging around his neck as if it would protect him. "I am not sure, but the monsters they ray riding seem to be the soul eaters of legend. They ray a type of greedy undead that devours the souls of the living. Folklore says they appeared in a city in the center of the continent, in the country of the beastmen. And what was the damage?" Boris's reply was horribly quiet. 100,000 Gazef gasped. Supposedly 3 soul eaters showed up, and the city was destroyed. 95% of the population, over 100,000 people died, and legend says it was renamed the Silent City, then abandoned. A heavy silence fell, and there are 500 of them here. No one had the strength to answer Marquis Revan's question. Gazef finally managed to squeeze out some words. "As I said earlier, I don't think the Empire could control monsters like that on its own, even with their great caster Fluda Paradine." So he didn't have to finish for Marquis Revan to understand. So this is the power of Ain't Ul Gaun. Then what are the things riding those monsters? That the adventurers looked at one another. "We don't know, but they ray just as dangerous." "No, my apologies. This probably requires a proper explanation, not a vague word like dangerous, but nothing better comes to mind." What should we do, Sir Gazef?" Gazef responded to Marquis Revan's unnerved question concisely. Withdraw. He understood well enough that the enemy had prepared a shocking army, so what else could they do but run away? Ill suggested to the kin. He didn't get to finish what he was saying because a masked caster took up position at the head of the army. To his right was a small figure in a hooded robe. To his left was one of the Empire's 4. Even at that distance, Gazef knew who it was at a glance. Sir Gaun, that the caster Ain't Ul Gaun. He summoned the Soul Eaters. "That guy, Marquis Revan, what?" The veteran hero gulped and gasped in a murmur. "What are we going up against?" Aints waved an arm. In response, a gigantic dome-shaped magic circle, it must have been at least 30 feet across, suddenly appeared with Aints at its center. The 2 standing to either side of him were also inside it. Nothing seemed to happen to them as a result. It must not have been something that could hurt his allies. Even the ones who knew they were facing an emergency couldn't help but watch the fantastic spectacle. The magic circle glowed pale blue. Patterns like translucent letters or symbols appeared on it. These letters changed at a dizzying rate. The same pattern didn't linger for even an instant. A gasp of surprise went up from the kingdom. It was like the oohs or ahs one might emit while seeing a splendid show. They contained no tension. But those with sharp intuitions began looking around in confusion. "I am going back to my army. We can't even consider a clash anymore. Ain't Ul Gaun's power is on another level. Trying to do battle with him was a mistake. From now on, we should focus on figuring out how to make it back to Rantel while keeping losses to a minimum. Sir Gazef, protect His Majesty and withdraw at once." Marquis Revan had been so calm until just moments ago, but no longer. "Right, I am not sure how much I can do, but I will go guard the king. And we shouldn't retreat in ranks, but of course not. This will be a withdrawal at a furious pace. It's a rout." "Very well, Marquis Revan, I hope you'll be safe. And you, Sir Gazef?" The kingdom's greatest intellect and warrior leaped into motion, except it was far too late. "Guess there aren't any," Aints determined as he expanded the magic circle. There were no players in the kingdom's army. super-tier spells from the game Yggdrasil were immensely powerful. For that reason, in a large-scale battle, neutralizing anyone trying to cast one first was the basics of combat. Using teleport to close in and stab, magic carpet bombing, long-range sniping, there were countless methods of attack. Yet no one came at Aints. Their absence was proof that no other Yggdrasil players were present. Without anyone knowing, Aints' mouth twisted into a smile beneath his mask, although it was impossible for a skeleton to truly smile. The wry grin spoke volumes about his mood. I guess I don't need to be bait anymore. He was glad he hadn't encountered any Yggdrasil players. Aints wasn't the strongest among Yggdrasil players. There was always someone stronger. Against a player stronger than him, he probably didn't stand much of a chance. His power during the game had stemmed from his knowledge. In PvP, he had a high win ratio, but it could be considered a streak only if the first encounters were ignored. Aints was ingenious when it came to utilizing information he accumulated. Conversely, against opponents he faced for the first time, his loss ratio was extremely high. He knew himself to some degree, so he was thankful he hadn't encountered a new, strong enemy. On the other hand, it was a bit of a disappointment. It didn't seem like they would find any leads about the being who possessed the world item and had brainwashed Sholtia. There was still some stubborn hatred in Aints' mind. Waves of powerful emotions were suppressed, but the ripples of weaker emotions persisted. Aints opened his hands. Inside was a small hourglass. He could have used a cash store item to cast the super-tier spell immediately. The reason he hadn't was that he was acting as bait for Yggdrasil players, but if there were any, he no longer had any reason to space out during the long casting time. It was really uncool to stand around in the middle of a magic circle. During the fight with Sholtia, he had been too stressed out. During the fight with the lizard men, he didn't use attack magic, so I am really looking forward to this. It's going to be so fun. What kind of effect would his super-tier spell have on the Kingdom's army? In Yggdrasil, this one wasn't so powerful, but what would it do in this world? Suddenly, Aints furrowed his non-existent brow. He was ever so slightly horrified by his complete lack of pity or any other emotion for the numerous humans who would die. He truly felt nothing, not even guilt from stomping on an ant. He did feel a desire to see the outcomes of his actions, that, and the benefits that he and the great tomb of Nazarick would reap. Aints focused energy into his hands. The sand falling from the broken hourglass flowed toward the magic circle. It surrounded him in a motion different from the wind and the super-tier spell was cast instantly. I shub Nigurath. A dark breath blew past the left wing of the Kingdom's army. The army had finally finished reorganizing its formation. There was no actual wind. None of the grasses on the plain nor the hairs on the Kingdom's soldiers' heads rustled, but all 70,000 men of the Kingdom Army's left wing were robbed of their lives in an instant. What had just happened? Not a single person understood right away. All the living things that made up the Kingdom's Army's left wing, not just the humans, but the horses too, fell to the ground like marionettes whose strings had been cut. The Imperial army facing them was the first to realize what had happened. What they had seen was so unbelievable that there was a lag between then and when their brains arrived at a conclusion. At that point, the commotion became an unusually large wave. It engulfed the entire army. They had known that when Aints Ulgaun projected the magic circle, he was probably about to unleash a spell. But who could have predicted this? Who knew he would cast something so horrifying? Who would have thought he would use a spell that would slaughter 70,000 men? This was more than all the Imperial troops deployed to this battlefield combined. It happened in an instant. Doubting their eyes, the Imperial knights all prayed to whatever they believed in. They prayed the kingdom soldiers weren't dead. They prayed such a horrible spell didn't exist in this world. Of course, with the truth right in front of them, no one was getting up. They knew that was nothing more than wishful thinking. But their emotions wouldn't accept it. They didn't want to acknowledge the truth. Even Nimble, one of the four, those pillars of Imperial strength, was staring at the now deserted kingdom left wing position. His teeth were chattering in fear. The reality that no one was getting up was so terrifying. No, a simple description couldn't cover it. Aints Ulgaun, this caster, was a monster. He could tear down human nations as if they were sandcastles. That reality hit Nimble stronger than any words. The commotion enveloping the Imperial army ebbed like a tide and vanished. Eventually, everyone kept silent, no one daring to speak. Once everything was still in the Imperial army position, a bizarre noise echoed.